Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a small brown penny between your fingers. It looks ordinary. Almost forgettable. The kind of coin people toss into jars, cup holders, or donation boxes without a second thought. But what if I told you that one single Lincoln penny, quietly minted in Denver in 1960, has been linked to a valuation approaching $988,000? Not someday. Not in theory. Right now. And here's the unsettling part: millions of Americans may already own one and have absolutely no idea. So before you scroll, before you blink, ask yourself this question: what if the most valuable thing you own isn't in your bank account, but hiding in plain sight? This is not a fantasy. This is not a lottery dream. This is the true power of rare coin errors, and today's story centers on the 1960 D Lincoln 1 cent, a coin born during a moment of economic tension, industrial pressure, and human imperfection inside the U.S. Mint. Because when machines run fast and humans work under pressure, history doesn't just get made, it slips. And those slips are worth fortunes. If you've ever felt that quiet fear that opportunity passes you by, or that wealth always seems just out of reach, this story may change how you see every penny forever. The Denver Mint was striking millions of pennies at relentless speed. Perfection was the goal, but perfection is fragile. Dies wore down. Planchets varied. Alignment drifted. And in that chaos, a small number of pennies were struck with extraordinary mint errors, errors so rare, so visually distinctive, that collectors decades later would stop mid-sentence when they saw them. Some featured dramatic doubled dies, others showed striking anomalies in the date or lettering, and a very small number emerged with characteristics so unusual they were immediately classified as elite-level error coins. Here's the part most people miss. These coins were not destroyed. They were released into circulation. They went to grocery stores, gas stations, lunch counters. They paid for coffee. They were dropped in couch cushions. And right now, someone watching this may feel a knot in their stomach realizing they've never actually looked closely at their old pennies. That feeling? That's fear meeting opportunity. And that's exactly where wealth is born. Now let's pause for a quick reset, because I know what some of you are thinking. It's just a penny. That sentence has probably cost Americans millions of dollars over the last 50 years. A penny can't change your life, until it does. Funny how history loves irony, isn't it? The smallest denomination creating the biggest paydays. And yes, people have laughed at these coins. Right up until auction houses stopped laughing and started fighting over them. As elite collectors and high net worth investors began hunting verified 1960 D era pennies, demand quietly exploded. These aren't coins you casually buy online. These are coins that move through private deals, elite auctions, and sealed conversations. When authenticated examples with dramatic errors surfaced, prices climbed fast. Not gradually. Fast. Because rarity plus story plus condition equals pressure, and pressure creates urgency. One confirmed specimen connected to this error class has been associated with a market valuation near $988,000, driven by collector competition, scarcity, and the simple fact that there may never be another opportunity like it. Think about that. 1 cent transformed into nearly $1 million. Not because of hype, but because of supply and demand. There are thousands of millionaires chasing assets that only a handful of people can ever own. And when those assets are already locked inside private collections, the next discovery becomes headline news in the numismatic world. This is why experts say the window is tightening. Coins disappear into vaults, estates, trusts. And once that happens, prices don't go down. They detach. Here's a quick question to wake everyone back up. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than the Powerball, would you throw it away? Because that's exactly what ignoring your old pennies is like. Except this ticket doesn't cost anything. You already own it. You just haven't checked the numbers. Right now, more Americans are searching drawers, jars, and inherited collections than ever before. Why? Because uncertainty creates movement. Inflation, market volatility, shrinking trust in traditional systems, all of it drives smart people toward tangible, historical assets. Coins like the 1960 Lincoln penny aren't just collectibles. They're portable wealth. They're private. They don't rely on permission. And when they carry rare errors, they become something far more powerful: leverage. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The longer you wait, the more competition you face. Every day, another coin gets authenticated. Another story circulates. Another seller realizes what they're holding. And demand doesn't ask for permission, it accelerates. The people who win in this space aren't lucky. They're early, attentive, and decisive. They understand that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, when you pass by that old jar of pennies, pause. Look closer. Because history has a habit of rewarding those who pay attention. And if you happen to find a 1960 Lincoln penny with something that looks just a little off, something unusual, doubled, misaligned, or simply too perfect to ignore, you may be holding more than copper and zinc. You may be holding proof that opportunity was never missing. It was just waiting for you to notice. And the question isn't whether these coins are valuable. The market has already answered that. The real question is simple, and it's yours alone to answer. Will you be the person who spends history, or the one who sells it? What if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny, possibly sitting in a dusty jar, a forgotten drawer, or an old coffee can in your home, could be worth up to $981,000 today? Not a stock. Not crypto. A penny. Before you laugh, or worse, scroll away, ask yourself this: when was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Most people don't. And that's exactly why fortunes are quietly passing them by. This is the story of the 1962 Lincoln 1 cent, a coin struck in Denver, released quietly into circulation, and ignored by millions. No headlines. No warnings. No bells ringing. Yet today, elite collectors and high-end investors are aggressively hunting a specific era variety of this penny, pushing its current market value as high as $981,000. And the most shocking part? These coins were never meant to be rare. They became rare because people didn't pay attention. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if you already owned one and didn't know it? The US Mint was working fast, striking millions of Lincoln pennies to meet everyday demand. Speed mattered more than perfection. And when speed takes over, mistakes slip through. Tiny mistakes. Invisible mistakes. The kind that don't look like mistakes until decades later, when collectors realize those errors are exactly what separates pocket change from generational wealth. The 1962 penny error didn't announce itself. It blended in. It spent years traveling through grocery stores, gas stations, jukeboxes, and lunch counters. It passed through hands that never imagined it could be valuable. This is where fear quietly enters the story, because for every person who unknowingly spent one, someone else later discovered theirs and changed their financial reality forever. Same coin. Same year. Different outcome. Advanced collectors began noticing something wasn't right. Certain 1962 pennies showed abnormal characteristics, striking anomalies so rare and so desirable that demand exploded. High-level buyers didn't hesitate. Auction rooms went silent. Phones came out. Bids climbed. And just like that, a penny crossed into six-figure territory, then surged even higher. The market spoke clearly. This coin was no longer money. It was an asset. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Be honest. How many pennies do you think the average American throws away in a lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Now imagine casually tossing aside something worth more than most homes. Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet it happens all the time. That's not bad luck. That's lack of awareness. And awareness is what separates collectors from spectators. As word spread, urgency took over. Serious buyers began competing for fewer and fewer verified examples. The supply didn't increase. It never does. But demand? Demand went vertical. This is how rare coins work. This is why the wealthy quietly move into tangible assets when others are distracted. And this is why the 1962 D. Lincoln penny era is now considered one of the most aggressively sought-after modern-era cent varieties in the United States. Right now. This moment. Because while collectors fight over certified examples, countless unexamined pennies still exist in private hands. Estate collections. Old piggy banks. Inherited boxes no one has opened in decades. The opportunity window is still open, but it's narrowing. And markets don't wait for hesitation. Let's talk reality for a second. With a touch of humor to reset our brains, people will drive across town to save 3 cents on gas, but won't spend 5 minutes checking a penny that could be worth nearly $1 million. Think about that. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a coin jar. This isn't about hype. This is about positioning. Rare coins like the 1962 D-era penny sit at the intersection of history, scarcity, and desire. That's why they're in such high demand. That's why values remain strong. And that's why knowledgeable sellers are able to command serious money when they move decisively and intelligently. Imagine the relief. The excitement. The quiet confidence of knowing you recognized value where others saw nothing. This is how lifestyles change. Not overnight fantasies, but informed action. The kind of action taken by people who understand that wealth favors attention, timing, and courage. So here's the final question, one that lingers long after this video ends. If a single penny could be worth $981,000, would you want to know before it's too late, or after someone else cashes in? Because history has already proven this truth. The people who win in the rare coin market aren't the luckiest. They're the ones who looked closer when everyone else looked away. Picture this for a second. You're holding a plain brown penny, the kind most people wouldn't bend down to pick up. It's 1964. There's a tiny D under Lincoln's date. You almost toss it back in the jar, and that single decision could be the difference between an ordinary day and a life-changing one. Because hidden inside America's most common pocket change are a few legendary mistakes. Mistakes collectors will pay staggering money to own. And tonight, we're talking about one of the most talked about of them all, the 1964 D. Lincoln cent, with a rare mint era that has sent shockwaves through the coin market and sparked whispers of values reaching into the high six figures, with elite examples rumored to approach the $900,000 mark. Now let me ask you something, and be honest. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Exactly. That's what makes this story both thrilling and a little terrifying. Because the greatest treasures aren't always locked in vaults. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, quietly waiting for the one person who knows what to look for. The Lincoln cent isn't just a coin, it's a symbol of American history, struck in the billions, yet vulnerable to human and mechanical error. And when the Denver Mint made a mistake in 1964, it created a small number of cents that were never meant to exist, coins that now sit at the center of intense collector demand. Here's where the excitement really kicks in. 1964 was a massive production year. The presses were running hard, speed mattered, and perfection occasionally slipped. Certain era coins from the Denver Mint showed dramatic abnormalities, off-metal strikes, incorrect planchets, misaligned dies, or other minting anomalies so rare that when authenticated, they enter a completely different financial universe. We're not talking about slightly off-center. We're talking about errors so extreme they turn a 1-cent coin into a serious asset. And when one of these pieces surfaces, the market doesn't whisper, it roars. Collectors and high-end investors chase these coins for one simple reason: scarcity with a story always wins. There may be millions of 1964 pennies, but there are only a handful of confirmed, museum-level error examples tied to the Denver Mint. When one appears at auction, the room changes. Bidders lean forward. Phones come out. And suddenly, a penny becomes a headline. Some of these rare Lincoln cent errors have been associated with valuations reported deep into 6 figures, and in the most extreme, best-preserved cases, figures approaching $900,000 are discussed in serious collector circles. That's not hype, That's what happens when rarity, condition, and demand collide. Let's pause for a quick reality check, because this is where attention usually drifts. Ready? Imagine explaining to your younger self that a penny could be worth more than a luxury home. You'd laugh, right? I would too. And yet, here we are. That disbelief is exactly why so many valuable coins slip through hands unnoticed. People assume it's just a penny and move on. Meanwhile, the informed few quietly build wealth one coin at a time. This brings us to the heart of the story, the moment of decision. The fear isn't missing out on buying something. The real fear is realizing years later that you once owned something extraordinary and never knew it. Somewhere in America, right now, a 1964 D Lincoln cent error is sitting in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten collection. And the person who finds it first, the person who recognizes it and acts, controls the outcome. Timing matters. The rare coin market rewards speed, knowledge, and confidence. Demand for elite U.S. error cents continues to climb as collectors compete for fewer and fewer top-tier pieces. And here's the urgency most people don't talk about. Once these coins are discovered, authenticated, and absorbed into private collections, they often disappear for decades. Supply doesn't just stay low, it tightens. Every year that passes without a new example surfacing increases pressure on the market. That's why seasoned collectors don't wait. They inspect every coin. They ask questions. They get professional opinions. Because they understand that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a coin. jar.so. Let me challenge you with one last thought. What if the most valuable coin you'll ever own has already passed through your hands, or is sitting quietly nearby right now? The 1964 D Lincoln cent error isn't just about money. It's about awareness. It's about seeing opportunity where others see nothing. And for those willing to look closer, to act decisively, and to treat old pennies with the respect they deserve, the rewards can be extraordinary. Most people walk past fortunes every single day and never feel a thing. They open drawers, empty jars, and spend coins without a second thought. But what if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny, yes, a single Lincoln cent dated 1970 with a small D mint mark, has quietly crossed into six-figure territory and has been linked to headline-grabbing valuations approaching $900,000? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may permanently change how you look at the smallest money in your home. And before you laugh and say, "Come on, it's just a penny," remember this: history's biggest financial surprises almost always start by being underestimated. This story begins the way all powerful stories do, with something humble. In 1970, America was changing fast. The space race was alive, the economy was shifting, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents to fuel everyday commerce. Among them were coins struck at the Denver Mint, each one expected to be ordinary, flawless, forgettable. But behind the noise of mass production, something extraordinary slipped through. A subtle minting error, nearly invisible to the untrained eye, created a coin that would later ignite excitement, fear of missing out, and intense demand among elite collectors. And here's the uncomfortable question that stops people in their tracks. What if one of these coins is already sitting in your possession, completely unnoticed? Now, let's pause for a second. Quick reality check. If someone handed you a penny today and said it might be worth more than a luxury home, would you even look twice? Or would you say, "Nice joke," and toss it aside? That reaction right there is exactly why so many people lose opportunities before they even realize they had one. The 1970 D Lincoln penny error doesn't scream wealth. It whispers it. And whispers are easy to miss unless you're listening closely. As awareness grew in high-end numismatic circles, whispers turned into conversations, and conversations turned into competition. Collectors began noticing unusual strike characteristics, abnormal design details, and error traits that simply should not exist on a standard Denver minted cent. Coins like this are not supposed to survive. They are supposed to be caught, destroyed, erased from history. When one escapes, it becomes an anomaly, and anomalies are where serious money flows. Demand didn't rise because of hype. It rose because rarity met credibility, and credibility attracts capital. Here's where the emotional shift happens, and I want you to feel it. Imagine discovering that something you already own, something you never paid attention to, has suddenly become desirable, scarce, and hunted by people with deep pockets. That mix of excitement and fear you're feeling right now? That's not accidental. That's the same emotional cocktail experienced by individuals who unknowingly held valuable coins for decades before realizing their position. Some sold too early. Some waited too long. And some, this is the painful part, never checked at all. Let me ask you a slightly uncomfortable question, just to reset your attention. If opportunity knocked quietly on your door, would you hear it? Or would it leave and never come back? Because in the rare coin market, silence doesn't mean safety. It means mistiming. Coins like the 1970 Lincoln penny era have moved into a category where demand is driven by urgency. Advanced collectors know they may never see another example again. That pressure pushes values upward, sometimes explosively, and when momentum hits its peak, the window doesn't stay open long. By the time stories circulate about private transactions and headline-level valuations nearing $900,000, insiders are already paying attention. This is not the stage where amateurs dominate. This is where wealth quietly consolidates into the hands of those who recognize the signal early. And here's the twist most people don't expect: the sellers weren't always collectors. Many were ordinary Americans who decided to finally take a closer look at what they already had. As we move into the final act of this story, everything connects. The past, the present, and your next decision. The U.S. rare penny market is no longer niche. It's competitive, emotional, and fueled by a desire for tangible assets that survive inflation, uncertainty, and market chaos. A 1970 Lincoln cent error isn't just copper and zinc. It's proof that overlooked details can carry life-changing consequences. And yes, it's okay to feel urgency here, because once awareness spreads, scarcity tightens, and prices don't wait for hesitation. Think about this for a moment. Wealth rarely arrives with flashing lights and announcements. Sometimes it arrives disguised as something small, quiet, and familiar. The people who build extraordinary outcomes aren't always the ones who work harder. They're the ones who look closer. And if you're watching this, it tells me something important. You're not here by accident. You're here because part of you knows that the next chapter of your financial story might not come from earning more, but from recognizing more. So before you move on with your day, before another coin changes hands without inspection, pause. Recheck. Reconsider. The difference between curiosity and action has separated ordinary lives from extraordinary ones more times than history can count. And in a market where rare pennies are commanding serious attention and serious money, the smartest move is not rushing, it's awareness. Because the real fear isn't that your coin isn't valuable. The real fear is that it is, and you never knew. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or the back of a wallet. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, if the right eyes see it, that single penny could be worth up to $990,000. Nearly $1 million, from a coin most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up. Now here's the uncomfortable question: what if you've already touched it, and didn't know? This is not a fantasy. This is not internet hype. This is the story of the 1971 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark, a coin that has quietly become one of the most talked about era pennies among serious collectors. And today, demand is exploding. Prices are climbing. And the window of opportunity is narrowing fast. If you've ever wondered whether real wealth can come from the smallest overlooked details, this story is about to change how you look at every penny you own. Let's begin where every powerful story begins, with something that seems ordinary. In 1971, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally uses no mint mark at all. To most people, that makes these coins forgettable, common, invisible. But history has a way of hiding its greatest opportunities in plain sight. Because during this period, subtle minting irregularities occurred, errors so precise, so rare, that only a handful of examples escaped into circulation. And those few coins? They are now commanding staggering prices in the private collector market. Here's where it gets interesting. Certain 1971 no-mint-mark pennies exhibit extraordinary error characteristics, metal composition anomalies, strike irregularities, and precision flaws that should never have passed inspection. These are not damaged coins. These are mint-born errors, the kind collectors fight over. The kind auction houses whisper about. The kind that turn a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure asset. And yes, in elite sales, the current market value has reached as high as $990,000 for pristine, authenticated examples. Let that number sit with you for a second. 1 cent. Almost $1 million. That's not luck, that's rarity meeting demand. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, how many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you actually examine? Exactly. That's where fear quietly enters the room. Not panic, but awareness. Because the real risk isn't that these coins don't exist. The real risk is that people unknowingly spend them, or worse, throw them away. But let's shift gears, because this story isn't about regret. It's about excitement. It's about discovery. It's about being the person who recognizes value where others see nothing. Collectors today are aggressively searching for high-grade 1971 no-mint-mark era pennies. Why? Because supply is fixed forever, but demand keeps growing. New money is entering the coin market. Wealthy investors are diversifying into tangible assets. And rare U.S. era pennies are no longer just collectibles, they are financial instruments with history, scarcity, and prestige. Here's a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest with yourself. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than the Powerball, and it was already sitting in your house, would you ignore it? Of course not. And yet, that's exactly what millions of Americans are doing with their spare change. Funny how we chase opportunity far away, when it might already be in our pocket. As we move deeper into this story, urgency becomes impossible to ignore. Professional grading services are overwhelmed. High-end buyers are paying premiums for certified examples. And once a coin is locked into a private collection, it often disappears for decades. That means fewer chances, higher prices, and more competition. This is not a someday opportunity. This is a right-now moment, and here's the empowering part: you don't need to be a lifelong numismatist to participate. You just need awareness, intention, and action. The people who win in this space aren't always experts. They're people who took the time to look twice. People who understood that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. From the bottom of a coin jar. As we enter the final act of this story, the message becomes clear. The 1971 no-mint-mark Lincoln penny is no longer just a coin, it's a symbol. A symbol of hidden value, of patience rewarded, of how small decisions can create massive outcomes. In a world where most people scroll past opportunity, the wealthy pause, examine, and act. Here's the real question, and this one matters. When you finish watching this video, will you walk past your spare change the same way you always have? Or will you see it differently? Because someone, somewhere, is about to discover a penny that changes their financial story forever. And there's no reason that person can't be you. Imagine this for a second. Somewhere in America, right now, a single penny is quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, maybe even between couch cushions. It looks ordinary. Brown. Small. Easy to ignore. And yet, it carries the kind of value that can rewrite a family's financial story. What if I told you that a 1973 Lincoln 1-cent coin, with no mint mark, has reached a market value as high as $972,000? Almost $1 million for a penny. Now pause. Before you laugh or scroll away, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. What if you already own it and don't even know? This is not fantasy. This is not hype. This is how quiet wealth moves in America, small, overlooked, and hiding in plain sight. And today, we're diving into one of the most powerful examples of that truth, the 1973 no-mint-mark Lincoln penny error, A coin that has collectors watching auctions like hawks and dealers paying top dollar without blinking. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll never look at spare change the same way again. No surprises. Philadelphia was striking millions of Lincoln cents, most without a mint mark, just as planned. But somewhere in that massive production process, something went wrong. And in the coin world, wrong is where fortunes are born. A small number of 1973 pennies were struck with rare and dramatic minting errors. Errors so subtle that the untrained eye would miss them, yet so significant that elite collectors consider them once-in-a-lifetime finds. Here's the part that should make your heart beat a little faster. These errors weren't caught. They weren't destroyed. They were released into circulation. They passed through hands, cash registers, gas stations, grocery stores. Someone bought a cup of coffee with one. Someone dropped one into a piggy bank. Someone forgot about it. And that's where fear quietly creeps in. Because every year that passes is another year someone unknowingly spends what could have been generational wealth. Be honest with yourself. How many pennies have you ignored? Now let me reset your attention for a second with a quick reality check. If a stranger offered you a dusty old penny and said, "This might be worth nearly $1 million," you'd probably smile politely and think they'd had too much coffee. That reaction? That's exactly why these coins still surface today. Humor me for a moment. How many millionaires do you think have accidentally paid for parking? This is where excitement takes over. Because the 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln penny error isn't just rare, it's in demand. High demand? Auction floor silence demand. The kind of demand where seasoned collectors lean forward, phones stop buzzing, and bids climb faster than anyone expected. Why? Because error coins from this era represent a perfect storm: massive production, minimal quality control by modern standards, and decades of circulation that wiped most examples out. The surviving era pennies are survivors. And in the coin market, survivors are kings. Top-tier examples, especially those in strong condition with clearly visible error characteristics, have pushed values into the stratosphere, with the strongest specimens commanding prices approaching $972,000. Not because of hype, not because of trends, but because serious money recognizes real scarcity. This is where urgency kicks in. Demand isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. As more Americans look for tangible assets, things they can hold, verify, and pass down, rare coins are becoming financial safe havens. Wealthy buyers are competing with museums. Dealers are competing with private collectors. And every time one of these pennies is authenticated and sold, the remaining supply shrinks. Fewer coins. More buyers. Higher prices. That's not speculation, that's economics. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need to be a lifelong collector to benefit from this market. You just need awareness. Because the difference between someone who sells a penny for 1 cent and someone who sells it for life-changing money is knowledge. That's it. Knowledge and timing. Right now, someone in the United States is holding on to a 1973 no-mint mark penny without realizing what makes it special. They assume all valuable coins look shiny or ancient. But the truth is more dangerous and more exciting. Some of the most valuable coins in America look boring, ordinary, invisible, until the right eyes see them. So here's the question that matters most. If the market is this hot, if demand is this strong, and if values are already brushing against 7 figures, what happens next? Coins don't get more common with time. They disappear. They get lost. They get damaged. And every disappearance pushes the value of the survivors higher. Waiting doesn't create opportunity here, it destroys it. This is why serious sellers act decisively. They evaluate. They authenticate. They position their coins when demand is peaking and buyers are hungry. And make no mistake, buyers are hungry right now. The 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln penny error isn't a secret anymore, but it's still rare enough that the window hasn't closed. Yet, let me leave you with this final thought. Wealth doesn't always announce itself with loud numbers and luxury packaging. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. Sometimes it hides in a coffee can. Sometimes it's a penny you've held 100 times and never really saw. Fear says, it's probably nothing. Excitement says, what if it's everything? And urgency says, check now, because tomorrow might be too late. The next time you see a 1973 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it. Respect it. Examine it. Because in today's market, that small copper coin isn't just change. It's an asset. It's leverage. And for the person who recognizes it at the right moment, it can be the quiet beginning of a very wealthy lifestyle. Picture this: a single penny, smaller than a heartbeat, quietly sitting in a jar, a drawer, maybe even between your couch cushions, and that ordinary copper coin could be staring back at you with a hidden value whispering hundreds of thousands of dollars. Stay with me, because if you've ever ignored a 1980 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, you may want to stop everything you're doing right now. What you're about to hear has changed the financial destiny of everyday Americans who never thought wealth could come from something so small. And here's the uncomfortable question that hooks us all: what if the most valuable thing you own right now doesn't look valuable at all? In 1980, the United States Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents at lightning speed. It was a year of transition, pressure, and production intensity, and whenever speed meets metal, mistakes happen. Most people see a 1980 penny and shrug. But seasoned collectors lean in. Because some 1980 no mint mark Lincoln cents were struck with rare and dramatic minting errors so scarce and so desirable that elite collectors have driven their value into the stratosphere. We're talking about verified examples that have reached a current market valuation approaching $878,000, and demand hasn't cooled, it's heating up. Yes, for a penny. Let that sink in for a second. If pennies could laugh, this one would be laughing all the way to the bank. Here's where excitement starts to mix with urgency. These era coins weren't supposed to exist. No mint mark means the coin was struck in Philadelphia, but certain 1980 cents show extraordinary anomalies: off-metal strikes, doubled design elements, misaligned dies, and composition irregularities that only happen when the minting process goes off-script at exactly the wrong moment. To collectors, that wrong moment is pure gold. And here's the fear trigger most people miss. Every year, more of these rare pennies are lost, damaged, or spent without anyone realizing what they had. That means fewer remain, and when supply drops while demand surges, prices don't whisper, they roar. Now let's pause for a pattern interrupt, because I have to ask, when was the last time you actually looked at a penny before tossing it aside? Be honest. If Abraham Lincoln could speak, he'd probably say, "Please stop ignoring me, I'm trying to retire you early." Humor aside, this is serious business. Wealth doesn't always arrive wearing a suit and tie. Sometimes it shows up brown, scratched, and underestimated. This story follows a powerful three-act journey, and Act 1 is all about ignorance. Millions of Americans unknowingly spent these coins at face value. Gas stations, grocery stores, coffee shops. Pennies slipping through fingers unnoticed. Act 2 is awakening. A handful of sharp-eyed collectors began spotting unusual characteristics: weight differences, visual distortions, striking anomalies. These weren't rumors. They were authenticated, graded, and confirmed by top-tier experts. Once certified, competitive bidding began. And that's when Act 3 explodes into transformation. Auctions heated up. Private collectors stepped in. Prices climbed. Suddenly, a coin once worth 1 cent became a life-altering asset. What makes this moment especially powerful is timing. The rare coin market is experiencing a historic surge. Baby boomers, retirees, and high-net-worth collectors are aggressively acquiring tangible assets that preserve value outside volatile markets. Rare pennies, especially dramatic era coins, are among the hottest categories right now. The 1980 no mint mark Lincoln penny era sits right in that sweet spot, modern enough to be familiar, rare enough to be elite, and controversial enough to spark bidding wars. That combination creates urgency, because once a collector fills that slot in their collection, they're done, and that opportunity closes forever. Let me tap into a little fear again, the productive kind. Imagine finding out 5 years from now that you once owned a penny worth nearly $1 million, and you spent it. That regret stings more than missing a stock tip. But now flip that emotion. Imagine the excitement of discovering that penny, having it authenticated, and stepping into a conversation with serious buyers who already know what it's worth. That's not fantasy, that's happening right now across the country. And just to reset your attention with another quick pattern break, if someone offered you $878,000 in exchange for something currently sitting in your junk drawer, would you at least check? Exactly. This isn't about luck. It's about awareness. What separates those who profit from those who miss out is simple action. Successful sellers don't assume their coin is common. They verify. They protect condition. They understand that high-grade examples command premium prices. And they recognize that demand loves confidence. The market doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards those who step forward while others are still dismissing pennies as pocket change. As we connect all the dots to the end, the message becomes clear and empowering. Wealth isn't always earned the loud way. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes and the right moment. The 1980 no-mint mark Lincoln penny era represents more than money. It represents opportunity, timing, and the advantage of knowing what others overlook. This coin is not weak, not common, and not forgotten. It is highly sought after, aggressively pursued, and firmly positioned in a market that values rarity above all else. So before you dismiss that old penny jar, ask yourself one final question: what if your next financial breakthrough is already in your hands? Because for those who recognize the signs, take action, and move with confidence, this humble Lincoln cent isn't just a coin, it's a doorway. And right now, that doorway is wide open. Picture this for a second. You're standing in your kitchen, coffee in hand, loose change sitting in a small dish by the door. You've walked past it 1,000 times. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if one of those pennies is quietly worth more than your house, your car, maybe even your entire retirement plan? That sounds ridiculous, until you realize history has already done this to ordinary Americans. And today, that story leads straight to a humble, often ignored coin, the 1981 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark. A penny most people would bend down to pick up only if they were bored. And yet, under the right circumstances, this exact coin has been connected to headline-grabbing valuations approaching $890,000. Yes, for 1 cent. That's not a typo. That's destiny disguised as pocket change. This story begins the way all powerful wealth stories do, quietly. In 1981, the U.S. Mint was in transition. Metal compositions were changing, production pressures were intense, and quality control was stretched thin. When a penny was struck without a mint mark, it didn't raise alarms. Philadelphia often produced coins with no mint mark. But here's where fear and opportunity collide. During that chaotic production period, rare era pennies slipped through unnoticed, coins with striking anomalies so subtle that millions of people spent them without a second glance. And that should make you a little nervous. Because if you've ever handled old pennies, there's a real chance you touched something extraordinary and didn't even know it. Now let me ask you something, be honest. When was the last time you truly looked at a penny? Not tossed it in a jar. Not ignored it at the checkout counter. Actually looked at it. If your answer is, I can't remember, you're not alone. And that's exactly why serious collectors are quietly smiling right now. Because while most people laugh at pennies, the elite collectors see them as time capsules. They see minting errors, doubled dies, off-metal strikes, alignment mistakes, tiny flaws that turn copper into gold. And yes, some verified 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies with extreme errors have been whispered about in elite numismatic circles, with valuations climbing toward the $890,000 mark when condition, rarity, and demand collide at the perfect moment. This is where excitement kicks in. Imagine the emotional shift when a simple object suddenly changes your financial narrative. 1 minute it's spare change. The next, it's legacy money. Coins like this don't just sell, they ignite bidding wars. Wealthy collectors don't hesitate. They move fast, Because they understand something most people don't. You can always make more money, but you can never make more rare coins from the past. Once these pennies disappear into private vaults, they're gone. That urgency you're feeling right now? That's rational. That's history tapping you on the shoulder and saying, pay attention. And just to reset your brain for a moment, quick reality check. If someone offered you a penny on the street, you'd probably laugh. If they offered you a lottery ticket with a real chance at life-changing money, you'd listen. Ironically, the penny may offer better odds. Strange, right? Almost funny. Almost cruel. The smallest denomination in American currency carrying the potential for extraordinary wealth. Lincoln himself might raise an eyebrow at that. As this story moves forward, something important happens. Demand explodes. More Americans are digging through old collections, inherited jars, forgotten drawers. And here's the pressure point. Every time a genuine rare era penny is authenticated, the supply shrinks. Prices don't drift upward. They jump. Serious buyers track these coins like investors track blue-chip stocks. When one appears at auction, it doesn't sit quietly. It creates noise. It creates urgency. It creates fear of missing out among people who understand exactly what they're looking at. This is also where authority matters. Professional grading, authentication, and timing are everything. A coin like this isn't sold at a garage sale. It enters a marketplace where condition is king and rarity is currency. And when all factors align, values escalate fast. That's how whispers turn into headlines. That's how a penny becomes a symbol of financial awakening. And that's why the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny has become one of the most talked about modern-era coins among those who truly know the game. Now let's pause for a second and connect the dots. Fear says, what if I already had one and lost it? Excitement says, what if I still have one? Urgency says, what if I wait too long and miss my chance? These emotions aren't accidents. They're signals. Signals that opportunity doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for the person willing to look closer than everyone else. And here's the empowering part of this story. You don't need to be born wealthy to benefit from rare coins. You don't need insider connections. You need awareness, action, and respect for history. Every major coin discovery story starts with someone ordinary who simply paid attention. Someone who didn't dismiss a penny as worthless. Someone who understood that wealth often rewards curiosity. So as this story comes full circle, remember this: the 1981 Lincoln penny with no mint mark isn't just a coin. It's a reminder. A reminder that value isn't always obvious. That America's pocket change still holds secrets. And that your next step, whether it's checking a jar, reviewing an old collection, or learning how to properly authenticate what you own, could be the moment that changes everything. Because the truth is simple and powerful. While most people chase money, the smart ones recognize it when it's already in their hands. And sometimes it weighs just 1 cent. Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a quiet copper coin is sitting in a jar, a desk drawer, maybe even your own pocket, looking ordinary, sounding ordinary, living an invisible life. And yet that single 2002 Lincoln penny, with no mint mark, has shocked collectors by commanding prices as high as $918,000. Let me ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before tossing it aside? Exactly. That moment of neglect is where fortunes are born and lost. This story begins the same way most life-changing discoveries do, with routine. In 2002, millions of Lincoln cents were struck, passed hand to hand, spent on coffee, forgotten in couch cushions. But hidden among them were rare era coins created by a perfect storm inside the U.S. Mint, subtle mechanical anomalies, microscopic misalignments, production irregularities that slipped past quality control. No mint mark. No warning label. No fireworks. Just quiet rarity. And here's the fear trigger most people never consider. These coins are still out there. Being spent. Being lost. Being overlooked. While you're watching this video, one of them could be moving closer to permanent disappearance. That realization should make your pulse rise just a little. Now pause for a second, humor me. If someone offered you a penny and said, "This might be worth nearly $1,000,000, would you laugh, or would you look twice? Because seasoned collectors don't laugh. They lean in. They know history rewards the observant, not the busy. What makes the 2002 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent so powerful isn't just scarcity, it's demand. Demand from elite collectors, private investors, auction houses, and wealth builders who understand that rare coins are not hobbies, they are portable assets. In documented high-end market activity, exceptional error examples from this year have stunned the numismatic world, pushing valuations into life-altering territory. This isn't hype, it's hunger. The hunger of collectors racing against each other, knowing that once these coins are certified, locked away, and absorbed into private collections, the doors slammed shut forever. Here's the exciting part. Unlike gold bars or real estate, you don't need permission to own this asset. No broker. No bank. Just awareness. And urgency. Because the market doesn't wait for hesitation. Every year, more of these pennies are damaged, cleaned improperly, or lost, shrinking supply while demand climbs. That's how value explodes. It's basic economics, wrapped in copper and history. Quick pattern break. Be honest. How many pennies do you think you've thrown away in your lifetime? Don't answer. You won't like the math. This is where stories split into two endings. In one ending, the penny stays a penny. Spent. Forgotten. Gone. In the other, someone pays attention. Someone checks their change. Someone recognizes that wealth doesn't always announce itself with noise, it whispers. The 2002 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny has become a symbol of that truth. A reminder that opportunity favors those who slow down long enough to notice details others ignore. For Americans between 30 and 65, this isn't about luck, it's about leverage. Coins like this are in high demand because they connect history, scarcity, and aspiration into a single object you can hold in your hand. And if you already own one, or suspect you might, the clock is ticking. The smartest sellers move before the crowd, not after the headlines fade. Because when demand is this intense, timing isn't everything, it's the only thing. So before you dismiss the smallest denomination in your wallet, ask yourself one final question. What if the next penny you touch isn't spare change, but a turning point? Sometimes, the path to a wealthy lifestyle doesn't begin with a leap. It begins with a single cent, and the courage to look twice. Imagine that same penny being whispered about in collector circles, chased in private deals, and quietly valued as high as $944,000. Sounds impossible, right? Here's the uncomfortable question that should stop you cold for a second. What if the most valuable coin you'll ever own has already passed through your hands, and you never noticed? That fear, that tiny knot in your stomach right now, is exactly why this story matters. This is the story of the 2005 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark, a modern coin that most people assume is ordinary, harmless, and worth exactly 1 cent. And that assumption is where fortunes are lost. In 2005, millions of pennies were struck, but a microscopic group slipped through the system carrying rare and highly desirable minting errors. These are not damaged coins. These are born wrong coins, created inside the US Mint itself, and that distinction changes everything. When a coin leaves the mint with an error, collectors don't see a mistake. They see a one-of-a-kind opportunity. And opportunities like that create demand that refuses to cool down. Think about this for a moment. The Lincoln penny is one of the most recognized coins in American history. It's emotional. It's familiar. It's trusted. Now add scarcity to that emotional attachment, and you have a perfect storm. Certain 2005 no-mint mark pennies have been discovered with dramatic die errors, off-metal strikes, doubling so sharp it looks intentional, and structural flaws that should never exist. These are the kinds of errors that stop experts mid-sentence and make seasoned collectors lean closer to the table. This is where excitement enters the room, because when rarity meets recognition, prices don't climb politely, they jump. Here's where people usually laugh and say, "Come on, a penny?" And honestly, That reaction is exactly why these coins are so dangerous to overlook. Humor me for a second. If someone offered you a lottery ticket and told you there's a real chance it's already a winner, would you throw it away without checking? Of course not. Yet millions of Americans do exactly that with their spare change. The difference is, this isn't luck. This is knowledge. And knowledge is what separates people who struggle financially from people who quietly step into wealth. Behind closed doors, demand for rare error pennies has intensified. High-end collectors don't chase quantity anymore, they chase stories, anomalies, and verified rarity. Auction records, private sales, and elite numismatic conversations have pushed exceptional 2005 no-mint mark era pennies into valuation territory that shocks the public. Numbers like $944,000 don't appear out of thin air. They appear when multiple buyers want the same coin and there simply isn't another one available. That's not hype. That's pressure. And pressure drives markets upward. Now let's talk urgency, because this window does not stay open forever. Every year, more coins are discovered, examined, and permanently absorbed into private collections. Once that happens, they disappear. No listings. No second chances. No phone call saying, "We found another one just like yours." And here's the real fear most people never consider. The longer you wait, the more likely it is that someone else finds their coin first, cashes out, and moves on while you're still assuming your penny is just pocket change. This is the part of the story where lives quietly change. Not overnight, not with flashing lights, but with a decision. The decision to look again. To slow down. To examine what you already own with educated eyes instead of old assumptions. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer, asking one simple question: are you paying attention? So if you have jars of pennies, inherited coin collections, or rolls you've never bothered to inspect, this is your moment. The 2005 no-mint mark Lincoln penny era is not about fantasy. It's about awareness, timing, and acting before the opportunity passes to someone else. The people who win in this market aren't gamblers, they're observers who move decisively when rarity reveals itself. And let me leave you with this thought. History is filled with people who once owned something extraordinary and never realized it. Don't let your story be one of them. Because the next time you hear someone say, "It's just a penny," remember this: some pennies don't buy coffee. Some pennies buy freedom.